The Goa School, as you know, curates unique spellbinding mentoring and learning experiences. And our vision is to build sustainable communities of inspired people who will support each other to build a purposeful vision of life, the universe, and everything. My name is Premjit Das, and I am an advisor to the Goa School, and I'm also Madhuri's brother. And so, first of all, Venkat, thank you for agreeing to take part in this.
Entirely my pleasure.
Yeah, and just as by way of an introduction, Venkat has been diving deep into the sea of change. He's a professional diver who was once a banker in Hong Kong, and he does a lot of good work in trying to save the corals around Goa. He's one of the most qualified divers, and he has a 30-year track record with lots of fascinating tales, which hopefully we'll be hearing some of them. He also runs an organization called Coastal Impact, which focuses on preserving the marine ecosystem in and around Goa, but not, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Venkatesh, but I think it's not just the around Goa, but indeed the entire Indian coastline. So why don't we sort of start, Venkat, with, why don't you just tell us a bit about yourself so that we get to know you, where did you grow up? What did you study? That sort of thing.
That's the hardest bit. Okay. I spent better part of my schooling in Hyderabad, product of Little Flower High School. So I was there from the 1st to the 8th standard, then moved to Mumbai, where I joined Kendriya Vidyalaya in South Bombay, so the 9th and 10th, and then on to Lala Lajpat Rai College for inter first and second year. And then moved to Bangalore, where I did my graduation in Bachelor of Commerce. And back to Bombay, spent 1 year doing odd jobs before I went off to Hong Kong for 11 years, working in the bank and also running my own business for a year in environmentally friendly products. Before deciding to, so then I decided I had enough of the materialistic life in Hong Kong. So decided to move to India, and so did my instructor's course in Hong Kong at the end of 1994, and then moved to Goa finally. And that was the first time I ever visited Goa, by the way. It was in April 95, just to check out the place. I had come from Hong Kong, and then finally moved to India in June and to Goa in September. So I've been in Goa officially since September 95.
And when you sort of moved to Goa, you'd already decided to give up banking, had you?
Oh, yeah. That was already history. Yeah.
So what got you into diving?
I guess just interest in marine life, interest in conservation in general. Used to watch all the documentaries on TV, and then got sucked into the beauty of the underwater.
Because the reason I ask is because it's quite a thing, because obviously having a career in banking and all that can be quite a lucrative career. So it's quite a leap of faith almost to give up something, and what I would guess would be a sort of a stable income and going into something which clearly you were passionate about. But congratulations and kudos to you for doing that. And when you moved to Goa in 95, what did you do in Goa? Did you sort of set up, I believe you set up a diving?
No. I didn't set up Barracuda Diving, which is basically my company now. It was set up by 3 other individuals earlier in 1993. So it was probably the first dive center to be set up on mainland India. And they were running it, but they were not instructors. They were dive masters, which is about 2 levels below instructor. So officially, they could not actually teach courses.
Right.
So when I came and I met them, they said, we would love for you to join us because we don't have an instructor. So I kind of joined them as a freelancer, really, for the first year anyway, to understand the operation and to try and fit in there, and also to see how the business progressed. So that's how I got into it. And then 1 year later, they said, okay, now you've seen enough, now better join us as a partner, which I did in 96.
Yes.
And then in 98, we bought out, there was a British gentleman who was there at that time, was one of the partners. So we bought him out, and then finally I bought out the remaining partner. I think it was in 99, possibly. I made it into a sole proprietorship, and it's remained my baby since then.
Right. And what's the name of this organization?
It's called Barracuda Diving India.
Barracuda
is the name of a fish.
Yeah.
It's a predatory fish. It was called Barracuda Diving because at that time, there's a shipwreck here, which is quite popular as a diving spot. And there always used to be a school of barracuda there, baby barracudas.
I see.
So it was a given that if you dived on the wreck, you would definitely see that. So that's why they called it barracuda.
Yeah. So, well, I suppose, so what is the other sort of marine animals that you see? Because I always thought that the barracudas, you didn't sort of find them off the coast of India. I thought they were sort of further afield.
Oh, no, they are, they're everywhere. Lots in Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean, everywhere. But you're right in the sense that they are deep water fish. Normally, they like to hang out in far deeper water than what we dive in Goa. Because they like the migratory fish, which are tunas and jacks, mackerel, that sort of thing. But when they're young, they, I guess, choose a sanctuary. So a big school of about 40 to 60 fish used to always be on the shipwreck because they would find prey there and they would find home there to hang out.
Fascinating.
So,
Fascinating. Yeah.
And this was only like 12 or 13 meters depth, which is quite shallow for them.
Yes. And they're the ones with the long sort of pointed nose.
Yeah, it's quite pointed. The mouth
it's almost like pointed. It's almost like, nasty teeth, but that looks like a bit of a spear, doesn't it?
No. You're talking about needlefish.
Oh, that's the needlefish.
Needlefish are very, very thin, almost like a needle. These have got a regular mouth, but yes, it's kind of tapered like that.
Tapered,
sort of a V on its side.
All right, well, I suppose
fish, they can be quite dangerous.
Yeah, they can be, can they? Even
they can be. Usually they're not.
Yeah. All right, well, let's sort of change gears a bit, and then could you, for the benefit of all of us, could you just tell us what is a coral?
Or what is a coral reef? Basically a collection of animals, if you will. It's comprised of many, many organisms living together. Primarily made up, the structure is made up of a calcium shell, which is extruded by a certain organism, and it attaches itself to the substrate, which is the bottom of the seabed or on top of rocks. And it grows literally, I mean, there are two types of coral, basically hard and soft. So hard coral is literally like rocks. If you touch it, it's got the same texture of a rock. And soft coral, as the name suggests, is quite soft to the touch. Not that I'm advocating touching it, because whether they are hard or soft, they're very, very delicate. So it's a big no-no to touch coral, really. And the animal which lives in there is actually an algae, which together with another organism called zooxanthellae generate the food. They do this by photosynthesis. So they need clear water, they need usually, and they need sunlight so that they can make their own food.
Make their own food.
Yes.
Now, in fact, that is why I was a little sort of confused, because my understanding of a coral was always, just as you described it, it was sort of almost like a geographic, topographic sort of feature. And then when they started talking about, the corals dying, I was a little bit confused about that, because I thought, well, how can like essentially a rock feature, how can that
Yes.
begin to die? So maybe you can sort of tell us a little bit about more when people say that, the corals are dying in general, what they actually mean. And then, we can, after that, we can sort of go on to sort of what that means for the rest of the world.
All right. Just to answer your misconception, which is actually quite common among people.
Yeah.
Particularly when we talk about coral reefs, the first thing that comes to mind is the Great Barrier Reef, of course, which is the largest living being on this planet.
Yeah.
It's more than 2,000 miles long along the east coast of Australia, as you know.
Yeah.
And it is the only living being which can actually be seen with the naked eye from space. So it is a geographical feature, indeed it is, because coral reefs in general make up rocks or islands, etc., which come up from the ocean floor, and then the coral actually grows on top of it or along the sides of it. So it is both right to assume it's a geographical feature as well as it's a living being which lives there. Now, it can die because as anything which lives has to die one day. But what is happening now is because we are all aware of climate change, we are aware of global warming, where the ocean temperatures are rising. And corals are in that way not very receptive to ocean temperatures changing quickly. If it happens over a long period of time, they can adapt to that. But in general, corals are happy between, say, 26 degrees centigrade going up to about 34 degrees centigrade, right? I'm giving a broad range here. In many places like the southern Red Sea, they're actually adapted, and they have adapted, and they are living in 36 degrees centigrade near Sudan, off the coast of Sudan, for example, which was a big surprise to some of the marine biologists, including the son of none other than grandson of Jacques Cousteau, who actually studied them there on a ship. So, yeah, we are finding new and new things. And there are some laboratories which are actually growing the corals in different water temperatures, taking it higher and higher, so they can acclimatize before being outplanted onto the reef so that they can survive. So there are many things which are happening like that.
Which are happening like that. Now, because one of the things I remember at one point watching a documentary, and I'm going to say that this is round about, I think this is the waters between Sri Lanka and the Maldives, right?
Right.
So west of Sri Lanka and going all the way to the Maldives. And I remember seeing, and this is this lady, and what they were doing was, because there was a coral reef there that I think had died or was being certainly, was being depleted. So what this lady was doing was, along with her organization, was she was, it was almost like a putting and growing the corals in sort of shallow water on some sort of man-made iron features. And I seem to remember that them being sort of broadly a sort of a triangle, almost like the bar of Toblerone sort of thing. And then once the coral grew, then sort of putting them down in sort of, because she was a diver too. So I suppose the point that I was trying to make was that it seems that you can rejuvenate a coral reef by human intervention, as it were.
Yes, indeed we can. But coming back to your last question, I missed answering one point of yours, which was the bleaching.
Yes,
and
the bleaching,
the dying of the coral, so to speak. So coral can die other than natural factors. Let's not go into that because that's a natural procedure, a process. But because of our folly, if you want to call it that, because we are putting up the temperatures of the water by over-industrialization and putting all kinds of polluting chemicals, etc., into the atmosphere, the water temperatures in the oceans are rising, as we all know. And that is going beyond the level that the coral can tolerate. So this animal called zooxanthellae, which is living inside the coral, which is what gives it its color, eventually just leaves or dies. So either it leaves and it drifts off into the water, or it dies within the coral shell itself. And when that happens, the coral is set to bleach because it loses all its color and it becomes white in color. Right? Now, if the water temperature doesn't stay warm for too long, and if it returns back to normal because of tides, upwellings, currents, then there is a possibility that that same coral can become alive again. So it's technically not dead at that point in time. But if it remains, the water temperature remains high, then there is a possibility that the coral will be overgrown with algae, which takes over the whole structure, and it will not allow the zooxanthellae to come back and live in the coral. So basically, the coral is dead. It will never come back to life after that particular coral. So this is what is called coral dying.
Coral dying. Yeah. Okay. And
so talking about transplantation, which you were touching on just now, there are many, many different types of methods that are used to rejuvenate coral. And the whole idea being that we grow the coral ourselves, either in a lab, in an aquarium, for example, or in situ, in the sea itself, which is what Coastal Impact, which is my NGO, is also doing right now in Goa. So 2 years ago, we started this project, pilot project, for something called microfragmentation technique of coral transplantation. So what it basically means is we find these pieces of coral on the seabed, which are broken off from the main coral, either because of wave action or because some boat has dropped an anchor accidentally on the coral and broken it. But these pieces belong to something called turbinara, which is called table coral. It grows like a table, right? And those pieces of coral are still alive. They are dark brown in color or light brown in color. We pick those up and we bring them to a different transplantation site, which we have done a survey and chosen. And then the method that we are using is we cut those pieces of coral into small pieces, which is between, say, 2 and 3 centimeters in size, right? And then we affix that using a special epoxy glue onto flooring tiles, the ceramic tiles, but not on the ceramic side. We attach it on the underneath. Yes. So 4 fragments, 1 on every corner, right? And then we have a metal frame made, which is like a table, but without the anything in the middle. There is no middle structure. Okay, so it's just a frame, and we drill holes into the tiles and attach it to that frame with cable ties. So every table has got 2 rows of tiles, 6 tiles on the first row, 6 tiles on the second row, making a total of 12 tiles, multiplied by 4, which is 48 fragments on every frame. Right. So for the pilot project, we put 4 such frames down, making a total of 192 fragments. That was a pilot project, which has been very successful. I'm very happy to say. There were mortalities. Some of the coral died, which we again replaced with fresh pieces. We periodically go, which is like once a month, we go there and we scrub the tiles to get rid of all the algal growth, which is taking over, to protect the corals better.
Because algae is obviously doesn't let it, it sort of interferes with the, I'm going to see if I can pronounce this right, the zooxanthellae. No, how do you pronounce? Zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae. Now, I noticed that Madhuri just asked a question, and we may come to that later. But is the idea that, with your pilot project, is the idea that once you put the corals in and they sort of, for want of a better word, can they then sort of reproduce and sort of grow, or do you have to keep?
There is, a very good question, because I didn't know the answer to this. In fact, I made a mistake in the initial stages by collecting all the fragments from the same place.
Right.
which is a no, because if you do that, then we end up in a situation called asexual reproduction.
I
It can
see.
still reproduce without sexual reproduction, but the coral biodiversity of the DNA, the eDNA of the coral, actually becomes stunted because it is limited to only that place.
The
corals.
DNA. Yeah.
Yes. So we have started collecting fragments from different locations and putting it so that now it can lead to sexual reproduction, and they grow very fast, and they hopefully will reproduce in about 3, 4, 5 years, depending on the species of coral. And at that point, the end game is that we will take those corals up and we will break the tiles around it, and we will actually transplant it onto the actual reef. So it will become part of nature, and it will increase the coral cover overall.
Yeah.
That is the whole idea. Yeah.
Okay, great. So now just coming to the question asked by Madhuri. Actually, before I do that, it's just I realized that I omitted to make a housekeeping announcement, and that is that, after 40 minutes, the Zoom session will end. And if we haven't completed by then, everybody, if I can just ask everybody to just dial back in. So Madhuri's question was, is it true that if all the corals die, we will die too?
Absolutely.
Is that true?
It's a given.
How so?
Because let me ask you a question. What do we breathe when we're breathing to live? It's a stupidly simple question. I'm sorry. We need oxygen to survive, correct?
True.
Where is the oxygen being generated? Now, this is the tough question. Think before answer.
Some of it is coming from all the plants and the trees on land. Yes. I wouldn't have necessarily thought it was coming from, any sort of source in the ocean.
60 to 70% of the oxygen that we breathe is actually coming from the oceans. Okay, it's not coming from your forests. This very few people know. It's becoming common knowledge now because of TV and whatever else, but it's a fact. And that's why we simply cannot let the oceans die. Even though you might be living in a landlocked place and you've got nothing to do with the ocean, but your very existence depends on the oceans, which you may not even see all your life. Right. Being in a place like, say, Delhi or Hyderabad or wherever. Yeah. So that's why it is very, very essential for us to make sure that the oceans and seas are in excellent health. Now, one of the ways you can do this is, of course, by not overfishing, because that has become a very big issue. To give you a very small example, 90% of all the tunas have been overfished. Yeah. They've been overfished. So there is no chance of that remaining 10% propagating and becoming big stocks like there used to be. There is no way. So the only hope now for us to get tunas or to help them survive is to catch them and grow them in captivity, either within the sea by having huge nets around them and moving the nets from time to time, or doing it on land in enclosed areas. That is the only hope. Okay. The other big thing, and we are talking about corals, so I'll come back to that. Coral reefs represent something like 1% of a tenth, if you can understand that, which is like less than 1%. 0.001% of the entire sea surface area of the world. But that 0.00 whatever 1% is actually supporting 25% of all the marine life which exists in the oceans. So you can understand how important coral reefs are. And directly for us, they protect us from wave action, they protect us from tsunamis by breaking down the waves before they actually hit the mainland, right? They provide tourism activities like snorkeling, scuba diving. They increase the fish populations, thereby helping the fishers to earn their living. There are a multitude of reasons why we desperately need coral reefs. And today, 50% of them are gone. They're gone already.
globally,
because they're not able to adapt. Yeah, they're not able to adapt to the ocean, the changes in the ocean. Global warming is only one point problem. The other problem is what is called ocean acidification. The very chemical composition of the waters is changing because of our pollution. Be it microplastics, be it other chemicals, be it the garbage which is dumped into the ocean untreated. So all these are affecting the coral reefs to the point of extinction. Further 20 to 30% are under severe threat. And if something is not done now, they could well be gone by the year 2050. You know? So it's a very grim scenario at the moment.
That actually leads us nicely into a question that's been asked by Maitri, in which basically what she's saying that is your organization sort of working towards making the corals, more resilient towards sort of future environmental circumstances?
No, we are not.
Right.
The reason is to do ex situ, if you not in the ocean but on land, to grow it in say aquariums needs steady power, which we have big problems with in Goa. We keep losing power. Then also the most important factor is the pH factor of the water, because we are growing it in marine water. So if the chemical composition of the water changes, if it becomes a bit alkaline or a bit acidic, that will be the end of the coral. So there are too many factors to take care of to be able to grow it in this fashion. That's why I chose to do it in the ocean, where it gets regulated naturally and normally. And then we don't have all these issues of losing electricity or somebody forgetting to maintain the balance in the water because of human error or, whatever other reason. So I found it a much better way of doing it in the ocean.
Okay.
But yes, I mean, as long as the temperature change even is relatively gradual. When I say relatively gradual, I mean over a period of a few years, then the corals themselves adapt. And they're quite resilient. Nature is very resilient, as we know.
It is, yeah.
So our trying to pray God, to me, doesn't make sense.
Sure.
It has to survive by itself. And we only can help it a little bit along the way in whatever way we can. Like, for example, wiping out the algae, scrubbing out the algal growth, which might be a bit too much, etc. Algal growth, again, is because of sea surface temperature going up as well. It grows much faster if that happens.
Okay, so we've got a few questions coming in. So the next question is from Rohit Kumar, and he says, "So, is there any connection between mangrove forests and the coral reefs in India? And what is the, if you could sort of want to comment about the condition of the mangroves in India?"
I'm not an expert on mangroves, number one. Neither am I a marine biologist. I'm just driven by my passion as a diver. So I should make that very, very clear. I could be giving you wrong answers, so please bear with me. Mangroves and corals technically have no connection between each other, because one lives in marine environment in salt water. The other one lives generally in fresh water and also in a mix of salt and fish. So we can call it, what do we call it? In river estuaries, at the mouth of the rivers, that sort of environment. But at the same time, there is a connection in the sense that mangroves form amazing nurseries for baby fishes or fish which are also marine in nature. So initially they might start off. For example, a lot of sharks give birth in mangrove, which then migrate to the ocean. So yes, in that connection, they are related. So that is the connection. Now, mangroves, I think, by and large, there is a lot of protection being accorded to mangroves, much more so than to coral reefs, sadly. Mangroves are being protected by the forest department. And unfortunately, I would say at this point in time, all the marine space also comes under the forest department. Now, I said unfortunately because due to no fault of theirs, because they are not trained for the marine space. So there is a lack of training and a lack of awareness among the forest department staff as to how to handle the marine space.
Yeah.
That is the problem.
Yeah.
Which is changing because in Goa, for example, I must add that they have recently formed a marine cell in the forest department. So I was in South Goa and North Goa with their staff, giving them a presentation and making them aware of what the marine space is all about. So they're open to suggestions, they're open to listening and learning, which is a very good thing.
Yeah, excellent. Well, actually, I'm really glad that you sort of raised that, because that really nicely sort of feeds into the next two questions, which is from Amrita, and that is, how is your organization working to increase awareness and train young people to save our oceans? Okay. And also, I think Glenn has asked a question in sort of, again, sort of adding to sort of comment upon the connection between the corals and the government sort of getting ready to auction the seabed and talk about seabed mining.
Okay, yeah. All right, two very different topics.
Yeah.
Coastal impact, if you let me tell you a little bit about how I was inspired to start coastal impact, is sure. In the late 90s, I was doing a dive at Grand Island in Goa. And I happened to be alone at that point in time. And I saw a big angelfish caught in a net, in a dead net, and it was still alive, right? So I ended up freeing it over a period of time. It had been struggling for a while. So it was really, really tired. So initially, when you try to help an animal, they get scared. They think you're trying to kill them. And they struggle even more.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
By some amazing interaction, they seem to understand in a few seconds that you're trying to help them, and they stop struggling. So they just lie still, and I slowly removed the net, and he was so tired that he could not even swim away. He just lay in my hand, in my palm, right, for a few seconds until he got his breath back, and then he swam away. So I didn't go after him. I just stayed there and watched him. And he turned around and he comes straight back to me. And I just put my hand out like that. And he literally rubbed himself against my hand as if to say thank you.
I can see things popping up in which, Kavita has just asked. And I'm sure you're going to come to that as to how all of us, as lay people, some of us who dive, some of us like me, unfortunately, sort of, not dive.
Are waiting to dive.
Are waiting to dive, right? And hopefully, when I'm next in Goa, you can sort of correct that for me.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely.
And but yeah, so how can all of us help?
Okay, I'll just touch on the point you mentioned last before we got cut off, was the deep sea mining. This is a very bad. It's a very bad thing that is waiting to happen. We are, as humans, unfortunately, the only way we look at nature is how we can actually exploit it to our benefit.
Yeah.
And that is a very sad thing. And deep sea mining is incredibly bad because till now, until very recently, we all thought that coral survived only up to, say, 50, 60, 80 meters, 100 meters max. But actually, we have found coral growing at 300 meters, 500 meters deep, and huge, huge, huge beds of coral, right? So, as somebody has very correctly said, that we know more about the surface of the moon than we know about our own oceans, which is very, very true.
That's true.
Every year, scientists are discovering new forms of life, which we never knew existed before this, right?
Yeah.
So God knows what else is down there. And even we are actually exploring the top, say, 100 or 200 meters of the oceans.
Yeah.
Whereas the average, let me stress, the average depth of the oceans is in the region of 5,000 to 6,000 meters. And that's just the average.
The average,
So it's
yes.
ridiculous to think that we know everything about the oceans. Nobody does, right?
Yeah.
At the moment, as I speak, at least from what I'm aware, there are about 40,000 different species of fish. Species. Now, within that subspecies, there are many more, right?
Yeah.
But given that we are still discovering many more species, and some of them not even known to humans, you can imagine how much more is there which we haven't even scratched the surface yet, so to speak. So it's a lot which we don't know. And we are already planning to destroy it. So we are trying to put down machines which are going to literally carve up the floor of the ocean, destroying everything in the process before we even know what is living there and what is surviving.
Yeah.
So, that is extremely sad. And that doesn't bode well for the future generations to come. Because our actions are always not very well thought of. No matter how smart the people making the decisions are, they're not very well thought of, and we never think way into the future or try to understand what could be the implications of something that we are doing today rationally. That is very, very good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, so if you could now sort of, I think everybody is sort of talking about, how we can help.
They can help.
They can help, yeah.
Okay. How they can help me? They can give me lots and lots and lots of money. Okay. Simple fact of life. We have got 3 projects coming up. And I'll tell you very briefly and very quickly about that. Number 1 is the coral project, which I told you about. The pilot project is now over. Now we are ready to start planting or transplanting many different varieties of reef building corals, which is what we need. Now, reef building corals in Goa, we have got about 30 different species of coral, hard coral, right? So we would like to mix and match these different species of corals from different sites to make them more genetically biodiverse and plant them. Right now, we have got 192 fragments, like I told you. We want to we want to transplant at least 500 fragments. Okay, so that's a big order. That's a tall order. Now that project alone is going to cost us about 30 lakhs. Okay, the big expense is, of course, I need marine biologists on board for this, at least 2 of them. I need, I have a whole bunch of volunteers who are willing to help, just like anyone, all of you. We have got boat expenses, which are very expensive. So every trip out costs us like 12 to 15,000 rupees, and we have to do 56 days of diving.
All
right. So all that is expensive, right? The second project that we're trying to do, which has never been done before in India, especially in Goa, is there are 3 islands in Goa that we dive around. Now, these islands, nobody even knows what is the total biodiversity that exists over there. Now, I myself have done a lot of surveys with WWF, with NIO, which is National Institute of Oceanography, with various big NGOs, guiding them, because I've been diving here. This is my backyard, so I know the waters quite well. But all the time, they have been doing what is called rapid surveys, which is only 4 or 5 days.
Right.
Which again doesn't reveal the entire biodiversity that exists. So the first step is, which I planned, was to do a survey from the coming September, 1st of September, right through till the end of April, which is technically the diving season in Goa. Because after April, the effects of the monsoon are felt and it becomes too rough to go out. So our window is only 7 months. Now, in these 7 months, we need to go out and we need to map the entire biodiversity that exists around these 3 islands by diving, by taking hundreds and thousands of photographs. And like in your phone, you've got a panorama feature. So the camera stitches together 3-4 different photographs, makes it into one big panoramic photograph. Exactly the same kind of technology, but it is called photogrammetry. This has never been used in India as far as I know. So you take multiple photographs every second practically on every dive along a set path. And then we bring it back, we feed it into the computer, and the computer does the rest. It stitches together all these photographs, makes an underwater map. So around these 3 islands, we are going to do at least 20 to 21 line transects, which is the surveys at different points, which will give us the general biodiversity. We can't search every square inch of the island, of course. So this is a representation of the life that exists under the water around these islands. And once this is done, we can even print a 3D map with it. And I can actually put the dive site map in front of me, showing the contours, showing all the corals, which will be identified hopefully by artificial intelligence. So we are taking it to a level of technology which didn't exist before. And I'm really, really excited about this, because this will give us the full picture, and I can then generate a full report on this and then give it to the Forest Department, and more interestingly to the National Biodiversity Authority, which is the overall biodiversity authority in charge in India, and get them to declare it in conjunction with the UN, to declare it as a OECM area. Now, what is OECM area? I don't suppose a lot of people know about that.
No.
Let me try and see if I can remember the full form. It is other effective area-based conservation, effective management, conservation management. So OECM, right? Now that means that if you declare any area as an MPA, which is a marine protected area, in general, all activity ceases there, right? The fishermen are not allowed to fish. The tourists are not allowed to go and snorkel and dive and whatever else. But with an OECM, all this is allowed, because that protected area is actually being developed by the local community. So the fishers will be allowed to fish, divers will be allowed to dive, snorkelers will be allowed to snorkel, water sports can happen, nothing gets stopped. So it doesn't run into legal problems. Wherever there is an MPA, there is a very big problem, because everybody gets excluded, their livelihoods get affected, and they all fight. They go to court to stop this, which is not a good idea. I mean, everybody has to subsist. So this OECM is a great concept. There are already some terrestrial OECMs which have been approved on the mainland India. There is no marine OECM. So my project is to declare an OECM using NBA by giving them strength by way of this report, so that it's justified to make it into an OECM. And once this goes through, I'm saying once this goes through, not if it goes through, right? I'm very hopeful. Then we can expand this all around the coast to make it into OECMs, because in the 2030 target under UN SDG, which is Sustainable Development Goals, India is a signatory to that. And we have actually committed to declaring 30% of our coastline and 30% of our terrestrial land as conserved areas or conservation areas. So this dovetails very nicely into that. But we have a target. So the target now is by 2030, we have to declare this. So I need your support. I need your help. If you know big companies or you're heading a big company, please give us CSR. You know, corporate social responsibility money, which is 2% of your profits, blah, 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 and fund these projects. The third project that we have is what I'm doing right now, which is marine education. So I do a lot of presentations for schools, colleges, anybody else who asks me to do the presentation for them by way of a slideshow. And I give them information as much as I can in a 45-minute to 1 hour presentation. So these are the ways we are trying to do our bit.
These are the ways.
So now on the 2nd of October, I have a meeting with all the volunteers and give them the bad news that we have no funding, but we are still going ahead. We started planning it already. We have, I'm breaking again into time, but we have a project for coral adoption. Now, this is where each and every one of you can get involved. If you have a wife, a daughter, a son, a friend, a sister, a brother, a dog, you can present coral to them on their birthday, for example.
Right.
So the coral that we are transplanting, we have put it up for adoption. So you can buy, or you can, adopt a piece of coral for a small sum of 5,500 rupees for a period of 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And during that 1 year, the amount that you're paying us will go towards taking care of that coral every month, going out, cleaning it. And you will get a photograph of that coral. You will get the measurements of the coral. You get to name the coral, whatever you want to call it. So you will get all documentation with it. And if you're a taxpayer, you get an 80G tax benefit. So 50% of the amount that you're donating will get written off and you don't have to pay tax on it. Even for corporates, this is a fantastic idea because you can buy blocks of corals, like you can buy a whole bed of 48 pieces and you can actually give it to your valued customers. Instead of giving a bottle of wine or some flowers, you can actually giving them a living being and nurturing it and helping nature. So coastalimpact.in is our website. Go on to that and you can actually pay us the money there and adopt a coral. We will send us, there's a form there you can fill up and give us all that. And we want to raise this money one way or another. If we do not get funding, I'm hoping each and every piece, we have already got about 96 pieces of coral adopted already, right? We've got 100 plus pieces still up for grabs. Get them now. Once we run out of that, we are going to be selling you fragments, which we are going to be transplanting starting October. So even if you pay for a fragment which doesn't exist right now, it will exist and we will live up to our commitment to give you that piece of fragment and we will take care of it for the next 1 month. So there you go. You have a tangible, amazing idea for you to work towards and support and do something for the planet right from your armchair or in front of your TV.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things.
Yeah, thank you for that. In terms of, okay, now let's sort of go to the more, there's I'm just conscious of time. In terms of, the what else in terms of the awareness and spreading the word, obviously you guys are doing really good work. And so I was getting a little bit of interference there. In terms of spreading the word and, what else is it? Do you have any other sort of suggestions in terms of, to the wider people out there and as to, how exactly the, I suppose what I'm trying to say is, there's always
how we can help.
Yeah, how we can help.
Yeah.
Other than, just in more broad and general terms.
Right. So there are a million things that each and one of us individually can do. When we look at the big picture, we talk about global warming, this, that, we despair because we think the problem is too big and it's not our problem. The government has to do it. But the government will not do it unless we ask for it, right? So each and every one of us can actually write to the Environment Department with suggestions, with asking what is going on, what are we doing to mitigate all these problems that are coming up. But by ourselves, after you finish with this presentation, when you're leaving this room, you could turn off your AC, you could turn off the fans, you could turn off the lights. That will save a lot of fossil fuels, which are being used to generate the electricity, right? When we go out, we always should carry bag. These are small things, but they matter a lot. India has just declared a ban on single-use plastics. Are you following it? Why not? Right? It comes from us, from each and every one individual.
Yeah.
Let's not point fingers and say, but they are not doing it. That's a wasted exercise. If you start doing it and you start spreading it within your own circle of friends, family, colleagues, associates, whoever, they will also start becoming aware, and that is the best way we can help. And remember, you are not alone. There are hundreds of people outside with the same mind. but they don't know what to do. So if you all put your heads together, or if you join organizations like Coastal Impact or WWF or whichever is the NGO in your organization, and believe me, there's one in every street practically. Yeah. And they're doing good work. They're doing great work. So if you join hands with them, it becomes easier. Because at the end of the day, we all need to work together. All right. So that is the critical thing. We can't do things alone.
Yeah. But also in terms of, it's interesting that you talked about that, because one of the things that I've often heard is, you've obviously, most people have heard about the Paris Agreement and where they're trying to sort of limit the increase to, is it 2%, up to, going forward. And then there's obviously the argument that is put together, but, countries like sort of India in particular, it shouldn't be the cost of development, because, you talked about the power issues. Obviously, from an economic perspective, we need power to be sustainable, to sort of support the growth and all that is coming. So what do you say to people like that? How can sort of development and conservation coexist in general?
Yes, I understand. It's a very loaded question in the sense that everybody looks at them as exclusive. They are not. They're actually very inclusive. But it depends on our commitment as to what we want to do. We can adopt a lot of green technologies which are coming up now. We can adopt a lot of and exclude all the old technology which is polluting, and phase it out as soon as we can. And we are, I think in India, we are at an advantage because a lot of the technology has already been developed in the West, but we don't have access to it at the moment. But it is becoming more and more open, and we are getting access to that. For example, solar technology and electric vehicles, all this is increasing every day, literally. So, there's a lot of it coming in, even to India. And even though it's not a perfected technology yet, because the battery is the biggest issue, but it will happen in the next 1 or 2 years. There's going to be an amazing growth, amazing change in the technology that is being developed right now. And that will be the solution. Right now, we don't have a solution for a long term. We have a short-term solution, but we need to aim for long-term solutions. We can't sit and say, okay, we have done this and we can rest. No, it has to be constantly evolving. So it doesn't have to be at the expense of nature.
At the expense of nature. But again, I mean, as you said, there's a lot of people are struggling with that all the time, because you talked about, the batteries. But even if the batteries were sort of fully developed, the biggest issue is the supply of lithium. And you have these massive lithium mines and all that, which you just can't keep up, which is, if they replaced all the, all the petrol cars tomorrow.
And disposal is going to be a much bigger problem.
Much bigger issue. So it's all sorts of complicated issues. Anyway, well, thank you for that, Venkatesh. It's been absolutely wonderful. And if I can just sort of at this point, I'm sure lots of people have burning questions and all that. Some of them we managed to go through. So if I can just open the floor to questions now.
Well, everybody is welcome to contact me at any time. If you go to coastalimpact.in, we've got our website, we've got our email, we've got our phone number, everything there. So please feel free to reach out at any time. I'm happy to either answer the questions personally or put a volunteer.
I think Madhuri might have. I think Madhuri's, as a lot of you may or may not know, Madhuri's my sister, and knowing her for as long as I do, she's always got a question or two.
And she's doing amazing work as well. I was really happy to meet her and talk to her, and you haven't put your name.
Paloma.
The Goa. Paloma, sorry. How can I forget Paloma Blanca? So it was a pleasure to meet them and interact with them and know what they are doing, which is also awesome work. So, when like-minded people work together, it's a pleasure because it comes from here, from passion. And that is very, very important in whatever field we are working.
Thank you. I think Madhuri has a question.
Sure.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Premjit and Venkatesh. I have a bit of an echo, so I better shut up quickly. And invite Maitri. I know she's got a burning question. And then I'll try and deal with my echo and come back with mine.
Hi, Venkat. Thank
Hi.
you so much. It was wonderful to listen to you. And I think you're doing some incredible work.
Trying to.
No, you are for sure. So I dive in Mauritius and I have been for the last 10 years. And that's why I sort of asked the temperature and environment, the coral propagation environment related question is because this is something we observed, and I wanted to know if you had a similar experience in Goa. Though, of course, the water in Mauritius is way cleaner and way there's no industrialization on that island. So
Correct.
it was quite an incredible discovery for someone who's lived in Bombay her entire life, to see clear
For sure,
water.
yes.
Yeah. So and I would love to dive in Goa, but I've always wondered what the visibility would be and how far would we really have to go, because the cost of the boat and all of that also sort of plays into the whole thing, right? But the one thing that we'd observed is that during lockdown, because there's a lot of garbage that is dumped by the hotels and the tourism business, right?
That reduced a lot.
Yeah, so the corals in Mauritius were dying, and it's a tiny island, so it's a great place for a case study because everything is visible, right? There's nothing that is not visible. You can just step out and notice, which you can't on the Indian coastline because it's so vast. So we saw that a lot of corals were coming back. However, with the changing temperature of the water and the acidity and all of that, a lot of newer corals were coming up. Like we saw colors and forms which we hadn't seen before.
Yes.
While I was having, I mean, you know how the diving community is, right? You meet everybody on the dives and people talk to each other, and it's a very, very friendly, open sharing space.
Yes.
So there were marine biologists who said that a lot, because nature survives, right?
Yes.
So they said that there are a lot of species that are now propagating, which didn't propagate, like the higher temperature. So the high temperature, high acidity species are propagating more, and the lower temperature and the previous condition species are sort of dying out. So is that something that you have observed? I mean, I know the water in around Goa is quite filthy, but did you observe a change like this?
Okay, I need to correct you. First of all, the water around Goa is not filthy. It's murky.
Great to hear that.
No, there's a difference. There's a very big difference, because there are two major rivers emptying into the ocean, and they bring a lot of silt down into the ocean, and that is the reason why the visibility is very poor. The second reason why the visibility is very poor is because the continental shelf on the west coast of India goes out very shallow before it drops off deeper. And that goes for about 12 kilometers. So even a little bit of wave action, surge will stir up all that silt. And that is the reason. But you come down to Goa, I promise you, I'll show you 100 different species of fish, 30 different species of coral, you name it. And you will see it. Even in bad visibility, you will see it. So that depends on how you dive. Depends on how you dive.
Yes, I look forward to that. So coming back to, have you been observing species that are like sort of seeming like they are thriving in the new water conditions? And are those the species you're propagating?
Not really, no. We have been, I guess, in a way, pretty steady, because in the year, not last summer, but the summer before, which is 2021, there was a lot of bleaching of the coral because of the water temperatures rising in the month of May, before the monsoons. Everything bleached. And I was thinking, oh my God, we have lost everything. But generally, during the monsoons, there is a cold upwelling of waters, which brings up fresh nutrients and cold water. And that normally happens in September, October, which didn't happen. Right? So the coral remained bleached until maybe November, December, when it happened, and then everything came back to life.
Nice.
Even one whole table of ours, which we had planted, went upside down because of a storm, and everything bleached. And I decided I'm not going to change those corals. I want to see what happens. So I let nature do its own thing, turned the table over upright and left it. And in 2 months' time, all that coral came back to life. So, nature is very, very resilient if we give it a chance, which we are not, unfortunately, because of the pollution and all this rubbish that's going on. But if we were to leave it alone, like what happened during the COVID times, a lot of it came back to life. And the visibility improved. From 3 to 4 meters, it doubled. It went to 8, 9 meters, which is remarkable for us in Goa, right? So for sure, you will have good times. I can assure you, if you come and dive in Goa. Don't let visibility stop you.
Yeah. That's wonderful to hear. And I really appreciate the fact that you're letting whatever you're propagating acclimatize naturally. I think that is a good decision, because not only will it not use the resources, but hopefully everything will be able to acclimatize and we won't lose too many species. So good luck with that. And are you also part of active? I'm not going to monopolize the conversation, I promise. Are you also part of any of the activist movements that are making sure that people are not discharging waste, which is detrimental to?
Not really, no, because I believe the thing is, different people are good at different things. For me, the worst thing is to go and break my head against some bureaucracy, which is a complete waste of my time. I would rather be in the field doing stuff, and I have a lot of respect and patience for people who have the aptitude to go and fight legal battles and go to the government office every single day and harangue them. That's a skill I don't have. I have very little patience with that. So
completely understand, but that is something I'd probably tell the group here, because a lot of you are well connected and are in places of power. One of the ways that you can help any conservation work is to try and push back organizations that are going to affect it negatively. So he can propagate all the coral he wants and follow all the rules and, be very aware. But all you need is one hotel to flush garbage
Very true.
And all of that hard work of like 10 years will go down the drain.
Yes.
Just by giving
I totally agree.
Yeah.
But that's a part of sensitization that we do. And, it's people like you and me who have to do it at the end of the day. Because if, for example, let's say there's Hotel A, which is doing this kind of thing, flushing untreated sewage, etc., into the sea. If, as a customer, you go there and you make the effort of bringing this topic up with the management and say that, what are you doing? I'm seeing garbage going right down here. That is what will drive them. Because if today we are so powerful, if you go and put photographs of that on social media or any other platform to ridicule that particular organization, they will have to sit up and take notice. So we are very powerful as individuals. We don't realize it.
Yes.
And it's not people like me who's in the field doing it. It's people like you who are in the cities and who are in direct interaction with a lot of other organizations, the media, etc. So it's very important for all of us to do something about it, not just leave it for somebody else to do it. That's critical.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm done, Madhuri. All yours.
What field are you in, by the way?
Many. So I work in the media, but academically, I'm currently studying climate change and development. And I also live in Mauritius, where I work with an environmental organization on a lot of projects to do with marine conservation and
environment. Great. So you're doing your job, see? Yeah. No, I was very recently, I was in your neighborhood. I was in Seychelles with a big group of divers. Yeah.
Nice. So, it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Because we take a lot of trips. Right now, I'm on 16th, I'm leaving for Raja Ampat in Indonesia, which is possibly the best diving in the world.
It is one of the best, yes. Good luck. I hope you see lots of stuff.
Oh, I will. I will definitely pin it down and see it.
You must.
So you have to get Madhuri into diving. She's looking a bit lost. Madhuri, you're going to be going underwater next.
No, Venkatesh, I don't like water in my ears. I'm quite fussy about it.
You don't
But
know
anyway,
that.
I hope I can learn
We'll
how to
get you in the
swim at
pool.
least. That's a life
We'll get you in
goal.
the pool first. Don't worry.
Huh.
Slowly, baby steps.
Yep. But listen, this is being a fascinating talk, but I've got two burning questions. One is
Sure.
one is to ask you, do you eat fish? And is it okay to eat fish? And
Yes, it
I ask
is,
that as a
provided.
little question. Yeah, because I know about ocean trawlers and things like that as well.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah.
there is an organization which runs a website and Instagram page called Know Your Fish. So my suggestion to anybody who eats fish is not to stop eating fish, but look at the types of fish that you can use, you can eat during a particular season. Okay, because different seasons breed, different fish breed during different seasons. So if you eat them during the breeding season, then you're going to wipe out all the stock. So responsible eating, not eating fish which are endangered, all these matter a lot. Yeah.
Right. And then my other question is about, training youngsters. Do you think that we've got enough young people excited about, India's massive coastline, about marine life, about conservation?
No, not at all. Not
So
at all.
what do we do about this? Because that's
do a huge education campaign. Huge.
Yeah, an intermediate step before we can get more people.
Yeah. So platforms like this are great because they make a lot of kids aware. I mean, for me, this is one of the smallest audiences I have talked to, because when I do schools, I do 200, 300 kids at a time. Thankfully, I, by and large, keep them awake. So, you need to bring in a bit of humor. You need to make it a bit more interesting. But they are an amazing audience because they are like sponges. They absorb everything you say. And they've got access to the internet. They go there and do their own research. Sometimes they come back and tell me I'm wrong, which I'm happy to listen to because they've done their homework. So it's amazing. It's an amazing process. And a lot of schools nowadays, Madhuri, the kids know about SDG 14 and UN, resolutions. They know all this. They're being taught that, which is awesome. So it's very refreshing to hear them come back with questions. And they thank me back by creating Instagram posts for me to say thank you for this presentation, which is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. Thank you so much for being such an active, educator and a person out there.
My pleasure.
It's really cool.